All right, so this is take two. So I had a little thing to take care of here real quick, but yeah, so take two. But yeah, let me know if the audio is good, and we'll keep her going. Yeah, so let me know if the audio is good. And like I said, we'll go ahead and jump right into the discussion then. Good deal. So yeah, 350 bushel corn. We'll just completely start all over again. I know some of you guys might have been in the stream earlier, which was about 15 minutes ago, and we'll just completely start all over. Take two. Even though, yeah, that stream only lasted for what, 5 minutes, I think, 6, 7 minutes, maybe. I don't know. But we'll just completely restart. So 350 bushel corn. So most of you guys know, or at least have been watching the videos at least, about the high population plot that we did on the 40 on the corner. And that one was planted at, there's 3 planter passes on either side of the irrigator at 39,200. Now, with the potential of, and I'm just, guesstimating here, 18 by 42 long ears. I mean, you're looking at 349 bushel, 346 bushel, 350 bushel corn. Well, that calls for 392 pounds of nitrogen. So at 392 pounds of nitrogen, you can't just look at the nitrogen aspect. You got to look at your potash. You got to look at your sulfur. You got to look at your manganese. You got to look at your boron. You got to look at your zinc. It's just, you can't just throw nitrogen out there and expect to get 350 bushel corn. So when we finished up side dressing over at the river, I brought the applicator back, and there was about 500-600 gallon left in the applicator. And I went ahead and hit the high population plot. And that was, I asked Dad and asked him what he thought, because I was a 6-to-1 ratio. So 60 gallon to 28 and 10 gallon of thiazole, what I was putting on over at the river for 70 gallon of the acre. And talked to him just to kind of see what his thoughts are and what I should put out there. And he was thinking no more than 50 gallon. So I got over there after I hit the last pass on the plot, and I'm looking and I'm like, if I run 60 gallon of the acre, that'll give me X amount of 28, which would be about 150 more pounds, for, 50 times, roughly 2.83, which I figure 3. That's, X amount of nitrogen that we're putting out there. Plus you're getting some from the thiazole. So let's just figure that up real quick. We put 50 pounds down with the planter. So 50 plus the 120 that we put out there side dressing, give or take, because it would be a little bit higher with the thiazole being out there. Then put another 150 pounds out there. You're at 320 pounds of nitrogen. Just between 2 shots side dressing and 50 pounds with the planter. 350 pounds of nitrogen. Now, I know nitrogen, you're not just, we've done this before, dump nitrogen out, not this early like that, not all of it like that, but fertigate and in turn only get 270 bushel corn. Not complaining, but wishing that we could have got higher. Now, you look at the fertilizer call as far as fertilizer removal for potash, and I believe it's around 459, I want to say, as far as potash levels go. But if you subtract 392 pounds, which is what that calls for 350 bushel corn, from 320, you're lacking 72 pounds of nitrogen. Now, granted, I understand, like I said, you cannot just focus on the nitrogen. There's different aspects there as far as, your potash, your zinc, your manganese, your sulfur. There's a lot more that goes into it than just nitrogen. So at 350 bushel corn, you're looking at 472 pounds of potash. what we figured as far as fertigating goes, we have so far until we meet with our soil guy and our fertilizer guy here from Michigan and Illinois, as far as fertigating goes, we have figured 3 shots of 2004. So 3 shots of 2004 would give us 60 pounds of nitrogen, depending on what we put on, which roughly what we would be figuring would be about 20 gallons of the acre. So roughly 20 to 30 gallons of the acre. So roughly we'd end up putting out a total of 60 pounds, give or take. So 60 pounds, you'd be just pretty darn close to 392 pounds, what you're calling for. I mean, give or take about 10, 12 pounds there. So, you know, my thought is on that is, you know, we need to be at a 1-to-1 with potash as far as a ratio goes. Because if you look at your potash call, you know, it's just, you would just have to be at a 1-to-1 in order to meet your call for potash late season. So is there a way to do a 1-to-1 for potash? Well, you look it up, and yes, technically you could do a 1-to-1 to potash. It's just I want to talk to our soil guys and our soil guys that we work with out of Illinois, and the guy that they work with for fertilizer and who we work with now with fertilizer as well. I mean, technically we've been working with him. We just haven't really talked to him before. It's kind of like we kind of worked through our soil guys, but now it's become a pretty much roundtable discussion with them at this point. About doing, which I know guys in Illinois, which I've read some online blogs about precision planting doing this, side dressing 2004, which we fertigate with 2004. But my thing is with side dressing 2004, one, you're not getting enough potash that you need. Yes, you're getting your nitrogen needs, but you're not getting enough potash. And second, you would have your gallons per acre would have to be a heck of a lot higher than what we would be running for 28 and thio. Now you could run, say, a potassium sulfate blend. Now, as far as the blend actually go, you know, what that blend would be, I'm not entirely sure because I don't know what they can do for a KTS versus an ATS, you know, ratio to, to your 28 or 32, because you'd be cutting essentially your potash with 32 in order to keep that in suspension. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, tying this in with soil or tissue tests, is the Y drop working? Based on these tissue tests, it tells me yes, it is working. Why? Because our nitrogen levels are off the charts as far as not being in a sufficient range, but being in a high range. Basically, there's 5 different levels: deficient, low, sufficient, high, and very high. Almost all of our samples came back in the middle high range, which is good. I mean, that's, you know, like I just said, that's telling me that the Y drops are doing their job like they're supposed to. Now, all of these samples except one were taken off the irrigated field. So, in theory, it should be working on the irrigated ground. You know, when I was telling you guys in the one video, which I've only got, I think, 1 or 2 videos out on the side dressing, which the next video would be out tomorrow, 10 a.m. for side dressing. I'll have 2 more videos after tomorrow coming out for side dressing yet. And we'll pick up more videos here later this week. So, but anyways, back to the Y drops then. Yes, I mean, by putting your nitrogen out there and then turning the irrigator on right away, I mean, yes, in theory, the Y drops would work. But as far as these drylands fields go, right here on this first page, this is the dryland field that we tested. And this was actually the first field, like you guys saw me Y drop in the first video, what our levels are. Now, you guys probably saw right there with that quick glimpse there, there's 3 different ones that are not in the sufficient and high range. They're red and orange, are boron, manganese, and zinc levels. So, which I'll come back to the boron, manganese, and zinc, mostly focusing on the boron and manganese later. But it's just interesting to see that the dry land nitrogen levels are off the chart too. Not as far as being off the chart, but just being showing that it essentially has taken up that 28 in thiazole. And how do I know that? Because our sulfur levels are high. Now, how do I know that? Because look at our Stark County farm right there. Sulfur's low. Why is our nitrogen high though? Even though, which I didn't tell you guys this yet till now, that field was the only field that was not Y dropped yet. I was actually, when he went and pulled those tissue tests, because I actually was on my way over there with the applicator. I passed him, our Helena rep, on the way back from when he pulled those samples with the applicator, headed over there to Y drop. Now, why is our nitrogen levels so high, even though I haven't Y dropped it yet? Well, that was the field, if you guys were following me last year, that our wheat was essentially froze and did not produce any seed. And basically all that nitrogen got tied up in the plant. So essentially all that nitrogen was still essentially not being fully utilized. So therefore it's still in the ground. Therefore our nitrogen levels are still high, basically due to carryover from the wheat. Now, how does nitrogen from the wheat, a year ago still show high levels from a year ago? Well, I mean, we had a whole bunch of volunteer wheat out there. And by having volunteer wheat out there, essentially it just acts like rye cover crop. It acts as a wheat cover crop, essentially then, keeping those nutrients in the soil profile, therefore keeping the nitrogen in the ground, therefore keeping our nitrogen levels up. So that's pretty interesting there, but that's basically showing me right there that the sulfur levels, that the Y drops are working in regards to the sulfur right there, showing me that our sulfur levels are low out in that field, but all of our other fields that, like on from these tests that were Y drop, show the sulfur levels being where they need to be, or at least in the sufficient range. I mean, theoretically. So what are tissue tests based off of? Now, most people commonly mistake them as a averaged yield basically. So basically everybody sends in a tissue test. It's all based on an average of say 220 bushel. Not true. Tissue tests are based off of your biomass in your plant. Now, how do you get 350, 500 bushel, 600 bushel corn, based on your tissue test? Well, I mean, after watching this Pioneer webinar on tissue tests, it really opened my eyes as far as how tissue tests are derived from. Now, I forwarded this link to Dad. That way Dad could watch it. And we ended up forwarding this to a bunch of our customers because Dad hasn't watched it yet, like I said. But we ended up forwarding this to our Helena rep also, so he understands also more on these tissue tests, because he's still in a learning phase as well, like what we are. And it's pretty eye-opening as far as these tissue tests are actually getting their results from, as far as it's not based on a yield average, based on an average of what these samples are coming in at. It's basically an actual snapshot biomass level of what's in your plant. So, okay, your percent biomass of nitrogen in that, basically the percent of nitrogen in the biomass of your plant. So say, let's just take this field right here, that's dryland field, is 4.18%. Now, what does 4.18% mean? Well, I guess there's 4.18% nitrogen in the plant, but what does, 4.18% theoretically mean as far as, parts per million? What does that number actually theoretically mean? I don't know yet. Neither does our Helena rep, neither does Dad. This is all learning here. We're learning on these tissue tests and what we need, how we need to be reading them. But what I can tell you is our potash needs to be what's the ratio for potash here on soil on tissue tests? Because on the tissue tests themselves, they're actually, not only should you be running as far as N to K or N to S on certain times throughout the growing season, as far as what you need to be applying as far as your ratios go, but you need to maintain a ratio, percent ratio of your nitrogen to sulfur, or nitrogen to potash. So let me find real quick the pictures I took right here. So your potash, nope, that's beans. There's corn. So basically, your N to K ratio needs to be below 1.4%. So basically, it's real easy. I mean, you just take 4.18% minus 3.54 to determine are your potash and nitrogen levels within range as far as within that certain ratio. Now, why do you need to maintain that? Well, I'm not entirely sure yet. So I know, like John just said here, it's a lot over your guys' head, but I mean, it's pretty interesting. I mean, it's a lot of stuff I've learned in the past literal week just by watching one webinar as far as tissue tests. I did not know any of this. Dad hasn't even looked at this yet as far as I just looked at this sample. Actually, our potash levels are, that's interesting. But anyways, yeah, I mean, it's just really interesting to see why we need to maintain that ratio there of N to K. Now, what they're actually saying is that you need to be putting your potash out early on in your V6 to V8 range. Now, why is that? I don't know yet. That's something that I want to look into more because technically next year I want to remove thiazole from the side dress and go to a nitrogen and potash program and maybe even put some sulfur in there if we need to be putting sulfur out there. So I want to put gypsum out, probably about 1,000 pounds, like what we normally used to do, and put gypsum out on everything. Basically get her 300 pounds-ish. I believe we get about 300 pounds per 1,000 pounds an acre of gypsum being spread. And you get calcium out there, which is a big thing also. But basically carry us through, and instead of putting thiazole out with the 28, put potash out with the 28 or 32 because we'd end up switching to 32 next year. But what ratio or what fertilizer blend could we run to get almost to like a 2-to-1 or 1-to-1 ratio for nitrogen to potash that we're putting out? That way we're putting a boatload of potash out at the same time we're putting a boatload of nitrogen out. That way we maintain and keep our or increase our potash levels, because that is a big mistake that we're missing here, I believe, as far as increasing our overall top end yield here, especially on our irrigated. So. When are you going to do the interview with your dad and grandpa about the old school John Deere dealership sign? That will be maybe late this summer. Maybe. So we do lime almost every year, not on every field, but just to maintain our 6.5 to 6.8 pH scale. Because that, if you look on the pH scale as far as correlating that with nutrient uptake optimization, 6.5 to 6.8 or 6.6 to 6.8 is the optimum range for most key nutrients, allowing them to be able to uptake a lot better, or basically the optimum range for most nutrients to be uptaken, essentially. So, but then gypsum is basically a byproduct out of the electric plants, basically. At least that's mostly where it's come from, basically. So, which it's getting harder and harder to find because these coal-fired electric plants are, being shut down due to the EPA standards and stuff like that. So liquid or solid fertilizer? Elaborate on that, Carson. How much rain did we get in Hana? So this morning or last night, we got maybe a tenth. It wasn't even really measurable. This afternoon, though, here we got 3 tenths, so a total of 4 tenths. And over in Wanata, I guess there was 1 3/4. Over down just north of La Crosse, just south of Wanata, there was 7 tenths over there. And we actually didn't get any rain over in Stark County, which we have an irrigator running over there right now. And we were debating on going and turning it off, and it's still running because we didn't get a drop of rain over there. So all I can say is that was very fortunate that we got that. That was a lifesaver. That was definitely going to keep stuff alive and keeping stuff scooting along here, because we were on the brink of a very, very bad year here for a little while here if we didn't get any rain today. Stuff was looking very bad, put it that way. So what was the deal with the Magnum in the thumbnail? As far as the picture, when I posted it on the community tab, that was some custom work I did with the Y drop. So I guess I could talk about that also, because we can come back to the boron and the manganese talking on that, because basically what we found real quick before I dive into the custom work talk, all of our tissue tests show boron being low, which is typical in our sands. Now, how critical is that to yield? I don't know. Neither does Dad, neither does Grandpa. This is just something that's always, we've known our boron is low, especially in our low CEC soils being in sand as well. So it's just something that we're going to talk to our fertilizer guys on, because every single sample here has come back low. But what I found that was very interesting is that micronutrient mix had a quart of manganese and a quart of boron, along with 4 ounces of Alleviate, which I said is essentially bioforage because it controls ethylene levels in the plant, which is basically ethylene is a stress indicator in the plant. So basically, if you're going to go through a dry period like what we are now, it was a good thing that we put on essentially that Alleviate or that bioforage, because essentially that keeps your ethylene levels down, therefore impacting, making sure that stress doesn't impact that plant as bad as what, say, if you did not put something out there to help control or stabilize your ethylene levels. Otherwise, you're going to experience an ethylene spike. If you go through, like, say, a hail event, a dry stretch, flooding, it's all about predicting those stress events. If you can predict those stress events, you'd make a boatload of money. I can tell you that right now. But since nobody can theoretically predict a drought or predict a flood, that's, you just got to work with that. So, but yeah, our boron, how crucial is boron to yield? I mean, that's something that we're going to talk about with our soil guys and our fertilizer guy. Because what was really interesting with that quart of manganese and that quart of boron in that micronutrient mix, on the 40 on the corner, our boron levels were the highest out of all the samples. Now, as far as the difference there, as far as levels go, all of our boron levels, as far as what samples that we pulled, were anywhere between 7 and 8 parts per million. And I just got word from Dad, we got 1.6 inches at the house. Wow, that is awesome. So basically between 7 and 8 parts per million. Well, on the 40 on the corner, we had 9 parts per million. Now, what does that tell me? That doesn't tell me much of anything as far as, for most, basically, that would sound like our levels are low, which, yeah, our levels are low. I mean, every single one of these are low. But comparing the 40 on the corner to the other samples, that is 1 parts per million higher than all the other samples, 1 to 2, depending on which ones you're looking at. That's very interesting to me, and basically that tells me that that quart of boron did something out there in order to increase our parts per million as far as by 1 point. Now, is that a lot? No, but for boron, technically yes, because you don't want to have a boatload of boron out there, but you don't want your boron levels to be low. But again, how crucial is boron to yield? Now, talking manganese, most of you guys know up here, probably including Dan, because Dan Snipes from down in Rochester, he probably, since Dan's in here, knows manganese deficiency in beans. Now, a lot of you guys out west, over probably in Iowa, up in Minnesota area, the Dakotas more than likely as well, don't know what manganese deficiency is, but knows exactly what iron deficiency is. Now, when I went out there, I did not know. Now, before, well, let me back up there. Now, when I was in high school and stuff, I did FFA, which a lot of you guys know that. FFA officer for 4 out of my 5 years in FFA as well. And they came out with a national crop scouting contest. I think my second year in FFA, and I started doing when we went to nationals, I believe we went to nationals once. I know we came close to going twice, but we screwed up on one question. But when we went out to nationals, which nationals was held out in Iowa State University, I did not know anything about iron deficiency in soybeans. Iron deficiency in soybeans, most of you guys know this if you guys have iron deficiency in soybeans, is the exact symptomology of manganese deficiency in beans, which is very interesting because I had no idea. I had no idea on that. Now, a lot of you guys, especially from watching Larson Farms, actually spray or put down soy green in order to eliminate iron deficiency or iron chlorosis. So what's very interesting on that is we religiously spray manganese on our beans for a post-emerge pass. Essentially, it is a planned program. That is a planned program pass, just like what those guys do up north and out west to eliminate iron deficiency, but we're going after manganese. Now, on muck ground, you will see manganese deficiency regardless of the crop. But manganese deficiency is showing up in almost every single one of our samples, except for the 40 on the corner, which had the micronutrients in it. What's very interesting there is all of our micronutrient levels. So I'll show you this one. This is a dry land field, but it doesn't matter. And this is the 40 on the corner. That's just one sample. Now you can see our nitrogen levels are high on that sample, but if I show you guys this, let me go back a page. Screwed up. One moment. Let me find it. Right here. Yeah, our magnesium levels are a little bit low there. As you can see there, a little asterisk level there. But what's interesting is all of our micronutrients are off the chart. Well, off the chart compared to the other ones. Sufficient. So that's interesting. Now, were we putting out zinc? Were we putting out iron? Were we putting out copper? No. We were putting out a quart of manganese and a quart of boron. But, like I said, our boron levels are low, but they are higher than the other samples. So that's interesting. Maybe we need to be putting out 2 quarts of boron. Maybe we need to be splitting up that boron, putting a quart in a starter and a quart in side dress. I don't know. This is all questions we're going to talk to our soil guy and fertilizer guy next week. But manganese is borderline sufficient, borderline low. So up, but it's something we're going to need to address later on. So that's why we went and got some Axel BMZ, which is a Hana product actually, and we put that up against some foliar stuff that our agronomists wanted us to try, which technically the analysis is a lot stronger than what the stuff that our agronomist is wanting to put out there. So Axel BMZ, basically we're targeting the boron, the zinc, and the manganese to kind of bring those levels up. And what we're wondering is that just going to be a Band-Aid? Which technically, yes, it's only going to carry us so far and then our levels are going to drop off again. So how do we maintain these? And again, how crucial is manganese in corn to yield? I don't know. Neither does Dad, neither does Grandpa. So this is something we're all going to be talking about, again, like I said, next week. The impact of boron and manganese on yield on corn. I don't know. So we're going to talk about that, figure that out, kind of adjust a lot of programs here that we're doing for next year, basically talk about building some different programs as far as side dressing goes and changing our corn program again for starter and probably switching back from a 22703S, because basically what we did was we split that thiazole up, or that sulfur up, and I want to go back to just 1034O again for the starter. I mean, it works good. And not to say that we didn't have any issues with 22703S, but my point is the only reason why we went to 22703S for starter is to get a little bit of sulfur back in the starter. But if we go to putting gypsum on again, why even need to put sulfur out there that early when you have roughly 300 pounds of sulfur out there? I mean, that's meeting your sulfur needs. Now, I know sulfur is a very mobile nutrient, but, with fertigating, we're able to put on a later season sulfur if we need to. So all really interesting things. And like I said, I didn't say it on this stream, but we're going to be tissue testing every 2 weeks. So not this week, next Monday. So we'll meet with our Hana rep or call and talk with him on Friday and say, okay, go out and sample these fields. And we're going to start sampling beans. At least I want to kind of get a head start in these beans, to kind of understand, okay, let's get an idea on our current nutrient level status on these beans. What do we need to be doing now? Now, I understand you really shouldn't have to target these beans, at least from my understanding and from watching the Pioneer webinar. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what all these 100 bushel guys are doing, or 100 plus bushel soybean guys are doing in order to push yield. Now, granted, I don't want, I would love to have 100 bushel beans, but I'm not shooting for 100 bushel. I'm shooting for 85 right now, 85 or higher. I'm not shooting for 100. I mean, 100 would be awesome, but 85 I really am shooting for. So what do we need to be doing? I've heard zinc, phosphorus are two big things that we need to be looking at, along with copper. So we're going to talk more about that next week with our guys and see what we can figure out. But who knows? I mean, it's going to be interesting. Like I said, we're going to be wide dropping them, and I'm not going to kind of go real deep into that, because that's kind of something that is pretty unique. Only a few guys are really doing, and mostly those guys that are working with our consulting guys are doing it. So it's pretty quiet and under wraps. So that's kind of something, it's just I'm not going to really talk about it too much, because I know a lot of you guys might jump on this if it turns out to be really well. I will share yield data with you guys, though, on that, as far as what kind of response we see from it. And I'll talk more about that on as far as what we end up putting on with you guys in the stream. But I'm going to kind of keep that under wraps a little bit in the videos. So, hey, Nathan, how's it going? So what rate are you wide dropping? So anywhere between 50 and actually I bumped it up to, so funny thing on that, over at the river, I figured a little heavy. That way I would have a little bit extra. That way I didn't have to run back to Brems to get more 28. And I had roughly 600 gallon left, and I had about 8 acres left to go. Now, which is all right, 1,400 gallon on 8 acres. So, which is all right, because we were going to do some on the high population plot anyways, and also touch back on one last pass on the plot, which I didn't end up doing any in the sweet corn. The sweet corn, I'll leave that for a video. I mean, it's an absolute joke this year, which I figured it would be, because it's a year-old seed, and plus I'm not worried about selling any this year. I ended up bumping that rate up to 80 gallon just to kind of try and use up some fertilizer here, and to kind of bring that tank down to around 600 gallon. And what happened there was I can run 80. That's probably as high as what you could possibly run on a 140 size orifice. I wouldn't recommend going any higher. I probably had the pump turned up to about 9.7, 9.8 on flow. So 140 size orifice, 80 gallon, I would say that's the limit as far as running with the wide drops. At least that's just my experience. So anywhere between 50, typically 50 and 70 Typically, my most average rate that I use or most common rate is 6. Yeah, you can slow down, but I really don't want to be going through the field at 4 mile an hour. I want to be able to go between 5 and 7. So, but yeah, so that's interesting. You could just go to a larger orifice, plain and simple. One thing though, I really don't want to be changing orifices. So, and the 140 size orifice works pretty good for that 50 to 70 gallon rate. So, to be honest, I don't know offhand how much these tissue tests cost. Basically, what I want to do is end up finding that out and figuring out what that cost per acre cost is and factoring that into our cost of production sheet, basically. That way we got an idea. Because basically what I want to do is I want to build programs, which we are going to next week after we get the second set of results back in, off these tissue tests, which is kind of interesting because a lot of guys don't build data off of these unless they have like 5 to 10 years worth of data to work with. My thing is I want to be able to get a whole program changed around based off of these in 1 year. Now that's a lot to ask, I know, but it's possible. And plus, from my better understanding on these tissue tests now, on how to essentially read these a lot better, because basically, we're just looking at these and saying, okay, all of these need to be insufficient. Well, necessarily no. A lot of times your levels need to be in the high range in order to achieve the yield that you want to achieve. Now, it's all based off of biomass. If you want to have 350 bushel corn, you need to be bumping your biomass up. Essentially, you need to be getting your nitrate levels and your potash levels a lot higher. I mean, it's just all interesting things, all relating back to tissue testing here. So, and tissue testing isn't old. I mean, tissue testing has been around for a very long time, and it's just becoming more popular because we're learning more about spoon feeding nutrients more, and it's becoming a lot better of a tool to understand spoon feeding and to spoon feed your nutrients. So back to so-and-so's question on the Magnum, Adam's question. So that was custom work. That was the neighbor's tractor that I was doing custom work for. If you saw, the 8530 was in the background there with the applicator. His Magnum, his 290 Magnum with the, I believe that was a case neutroplacer that was there hooked up to it. We were doing a 40-acre field, and he didn't really know for sure how to set up the trial. And I said, let's just skip every other round, and you fill in between, or I'll fill in between with the wide drops, vice versa, depending on who starts first, which I actually ended up starting in that field. And so he came back in and filled in with his colders. So not only are we going to have an anhydrous versus wide drop, we're going to have a 28 colder versus 28 wide drop. And he asked me flat out if we should be putting N-Fix with it. And I told him, our agronomists or our consultants recommended that we do all of our dry land with a stabilizer, which we did. And if you guys, I don't have that video out yet, but I will have that video out tomorrow for you guys talking about stabilizer comparison, comparing stabilizers. We actually did a stabilizer comparison trial where we put no stabilizer on a couple rounds, or on a round, sorry, and N-Fix on throughout the majority of the field, and tried out Hydrohume, which is basically, basically from what my understanding is from a neighbor that used it, and I actually did some custom work for it as well with the wide drops, is it's organic matter in a jug, along with a stabilizer, and increases nutrient uptake and nutrient efficiency. So it's pretty interesting. It's thick, not necessarily really thick. It's like black sludge, but it's not really sludge. It's more, it'll stain anything that gets on it. I mean, it's not too bad where you can clean it out with some water. It fogs up your red balls completely solid, so you can't even see the red balls. But after one load of 28, after like 2 rounds, they're completely cleaned out. So do you need stabilizer this late in the season? Yes. I would recommend putting stabilizer in this late in the season. At least that's where agronomists recommended as well. If there's going to be no rain. I mean, if there's no rain, I mean, how else is the nitrogen going to get in the ground? Well, Greg Souter says, oh, dew on the plant. And I don't believe that at all. But I don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting. And like I said, tissue tests next week are going to be pretty interesting to see. Now, granted, we're not going to have a lot of dry land fields that we do tissue testing on, but, we will have that check out there on the river, which we will do tissue tests on to see what kind of response we get with no stabilizer versus N-Fix versus hydrohume. And basically decide, okay, what stabilizer do we end up wanting to go with as far as a gallon per acre of hydrohume or a quart per ton of 28 for N-Fix. So is who's selling the product? Who are you asking as far as who is selling? Like our Helena rep or our consultants? Because our consultants are not selling us the product. Our consultants are consultants for as far as tissue testing, or not tissue testing, sorry, soil testing and agronomic advice as far as stuff that we should be doing and considering doing and trying as far as fertilizer blends and stuff like that. Our Helena rep is selling us the N-Fix because we came to them and asked them for the N-Fix. And our Helena rep is wanting us to try the hydrohume. None of this we ran past. We never ran the hydrohume past our agronomic consultants. Basically, that was our guys wanted us to run Agritane. So when I went over to Malden to Co-Alliance to get a load of 28 Thio, they did not have any Agritane. So I called Dad and talked to him, and we ended up calling up to Helena then. And they had N-Fix, which we had no idea what the heck N-Fix XLR was. And we found out it's basically the same thing based on the NDPTB levels. So we ended up using N-Fix XLR, but our Helena rep was really wanting us to try out hydrohume, so that's why we put out the hydrohume trial. Now, yes, we had to buy that, but I don't know. I mean, if it pays more to use that versus N-Fix, then that's what we'll end up going to is hydrohume. But I don't know. Personally, I would rather almost do hydrohume because it's easier to figure because it's on a gallon per acre basis versus, the N-Fix is always based on a quart per ton, even though I figured up the ounces per 100 gallon because at one point I was actually not doing full loads. So I was trying to figure out, okay, how much N-Fix do I actually need? Because essentially for a full 1,800 gallon load, it works perfect to put in a 2.5 gallon jug. But I think I have it here on my notes. Hopefully I still do. It's 35 and a half ounces per 200 gallon. So basically you divide that by 2 and it's like 17 some ounces. So 35 divided, it's 17.75. So 17.75 of an ounce of N-Fix per 100 gallon. Now, are you going to be figuring on per 100 gallon, rates all the time? No, I mean, you're not. I mean, it's, you're going to have some 1450 batches. You're going to have some, it's not going to be even number batches. And plus it's just a guesstimation based on the tank level on the outside, what you're actually putting in, and plus if you're sitting level and stuff like that. I mean, it's a lot harder to figure with N-Fix. Not necessarily too much harder, but in my opinion, hydrohume would just be a lot easier to deal with as far as on a per acre level basis versus on a quart per ton per acre basis, basically. So, it's just a little bit easier to work with as far as figuring wise. So, and plus with 2.5 gallon jugs, I mean, simple. N-Fix also, I mean, it comes in 2.5 gallon jugs and you just got to measure it out and dump it in. Depending on if you're not doing a full 1,800 gallon load, like I said, you got to figure on so many ounce per 100 gallon or whatever, so yeah. So I did some custom work. Yeah, going back to Adam's question because I haven't really fully answered that. So Adam, that was the neighbor's applicator then, and yeah, we did some custom work there. So I ran some for a neighbor up in LaPorte, anhydrous versus Y drop 28, and then this neighbor that has the Case Magnum wanted to do a Y drop 28 colder, and basically the only difference there is he's running straight 28 and I'm running 28 through the Y drops with NFix XLR. So, which actually that went on Friday. And to be honest, we were not sure if we were going to get this rain or not. And thankfully, thank God, we did. So, necessarily, was that NFix XLR a waste of money? Necessarily, no, because this rain was so spotty. It wasn't money thrown away. Put it that way. I mean, it's good to have a stabilizer out there. If you get off a little, it really don't matter. Necessarily, no, but you are paying for product, and you don't want to get off by a lot. And like I said, we don't know for sure how much this was. It's just one of those circumstances where it doesn't matter the price. We need it, so just give it to us. Not give it to us. I mean, obviously, we're paying for it, but we'll find out here within the week how much that is, because I would like to figure out a hydrohume per acre rate. Hey, thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it. But I'll figure up a hydrohume per acre rate, because basically it doesn't matter how much the product costs as far as per gallon or per quart per ton. What boils down to is the price per acre, essentially. What is that cost per acre cost in order to put that product out there? What is cheaper on a cost per acre level? It doesn't matter if it's a gallon per acre rate or if it's a quart per ton rate. What matters is what's cheaper on a cost per acre level, because what's making you more money on an ROI level is your cost per acre level. So that's what we got to look at. So basically, we're not going to know as far as a stabilizer goes until the combine goes through the field. So look at the yield map and determine, what kind of response we're seeing. So depending on the yield difference, we'll end up going with either hydrohume or NFix, whatever. So as far as NFix versus Agritane, like I said, NFix and Agritane are essentially the exact same product. So we might end up going to Agritane. So let's just say hydrohume doesn't show anything. Hydrohume doesn't show anything. Let's just throw that out of the equation. So we're going with NFix, but since NFix and Agritane are essentially the same product, what basically is the price difference there? If Agritane is cheaper, we'll go with Agritane, because Agritane is essentially, like I said, the same product as NFix. Somebody's going by on a motorcycle. Wow. But anyways, so going back, yeah. So if Agritane's cheaper, we'll go with Agritane. If NFix is cheaper, we'll just go with NFix. I mean, that's only if hydrohume doesn't show anything. If hydrohume shows something more than what NFix shows, we'll go with hydrohume. And again, that all reverts back to a cost per acre basis. So we'll just have to figure on that. If you had a farm sim map, yeah, I mean, that would actually be pretty cool someday, but I don't know. Hello from Walton, Indiana. Hello, Dustin. How's it going? Are you speaking English? Oh, yeah, very technical. Nothing in Rochester, few drops was all. Yeah, I heard from Eric Wapple from him posting on Facebook that didn't really seem like they were getting much rain down there based on his Facebook posts. Really? So you guys had 2 inches over there, Nate. That's interesting. Richter Farms LLC, I believe I pronounced that right. Richter, Indiana. I don't know what you mean by Indiana, but hey, thanks for tuning in. Greetings from North Texas. Just came across your channel and watched a 4020 barn fight video. Thanks for watching, G&G. Thank you for sharing. How's that tractor working for y'all? So far, really love it. Like I said, probably when you watch that video, that is the first 4020 on the farm in a long time. Richter's scale. Not really understanding what you're meaning there, Richter. I believe if I said that right. But yeah, love the 4020. It's working out great, and it works great for a little sweet corn planter and a little basically odd job tractor, essentially. Thanks for the great info. No problem. Howdy, cutting hay tonight. Sweet. How much hay you cutting, Jake? Has a lot of your new crops sold? Yes and no. Not really going to dive into that too much there in our grain marketing. Are you shooting for 350 bushel corn? As the title suggests, yes. I would like to hit 350 bushel corn. Highest we have hit, because I know that's going to be a follow-up question there. Highest we have hit is 327. Now, what I mean by hit is most of you guys know, going through the field with a yield monitor, you're bouncing up and down with the yield map. That number is what we've hit on the yield map before. We have an average 327, obviously, but we've hit 327. Every single year, though, we have increased our overall top end yield. So that is good, but 327 in my mind is the number to beat. Like I said, though, with the high population plot, with us putting out X amount of pounds of nitrogen out there, and also looking at the fact that we're trying to put more fertilizer on in order to essentially achieve an 18 by 42 long ear at 39,200 population to essentially, achieve 350 bushel corn. I mean, that's what we're shooting for, essentially. I mean, if we can do that, I mean, that'd be awesome. Wow, 600 acres first cut. That's awesome. Exactly. Average is all that matters. I mean, when you factor in dry corners or poor spots or wet spots or even dry spots in the field that literally are making 120, if even that, I mean, that drags your average down significantly. So that's why we started eliminating our dry land corners. And basically what we're only concerned about, we'll actually take, I discussed this, I believe, on the last stream, comparing our dry land yield with the irrigated yield, and then just comparing that with just focusing on the irrigated yield. And when you take the dry land corners out of the equation, I mean, it's significant. I mean, you could be looking at 15 bushel alone off your average, comparing, taking the entire field versus just looking at what's irrigated. So, I mean, that's why we started taking literally some fields and eliminating those dry land corners completely and putting them in alfalfa, because one, it's not worth to farm a dry land corner on a sand hill if you're only going to make 100 to 130 bushel corn. Economically, that doesn't make any sense. So, Richter Farm, yeah, that's right, and so what else do you guys want to talk about tonight? I know I kind of went off there. How many local guys are on the stream tonight? I know there's about 41 of you guys on here. Be sure to give this stream a like. I see we're at 37 likes. I appreciate you guys all stopping by in here tonight and hanging out. But how many local guys, say from Northwest Indiana, are in the stream tonight? So, yes, as I was talking about earlier on custom work, I've been doing a little bit of custom work here. I did a total of 45 acres of custom work, 20 acres for one guy and 25 acres for another guy. So a total of 45 acres of custom work, Y dropping. I think there's a question earlier, I might have skimmed over it. What is the tallest the corn can get before it would cause damage from the applicator if you want to do another Y drop application? So, good question. Coming back in on the high population plot and doing a second shot, would it pay? Part of the reason why was in order to put enough fertilizer out there in order for us to achieve essentially or have enough fertilizer out there for the call or the demand for 350 bushel corn, but also coming back in and seeing, because there was a little bit left, that I carried that over into the 32,000, which is what that whole field was planted at, not where the 39 high population plot was, but where the rest of the field was planted at. So at 32,000, 33,000. And basically to also see, does a late season side dress, not really late, but like a second shot of side dressing pay? So how tall corn can I go over? Well, I talked to a guy over in Illinois, and he said running Y drops on his applicator, he was running in waist tall corn. And basically at that point, the tractor's your limiting factor. Now, some of you guys are like, why in the world didn't you buy a sprayer and get Y drops for a sprayer? Well, the biggest thing is that we're doing post-emerge spraying on both corn and beans, mostly on beans. Corn, we typically have all the post-emerge done with our residuals done before side dressing hits, but it just depends on the year. Who knows? I mean, we could be swamped next year on both post-emerge spraying corn and beans while we're side dressing. So that's why we got an applicator. That way we can kind of split the load up on the sprayer. So that way, if we even do, when we go to a high clearance, hopefully next year would be really nice. It kind of splits the load up there on the sprayer there. What I would like to do is do some very late season stuff around like in the from VT to R5, somewhere in there, have the capabilities to do our own Y dropping late season with a sprayer. That'd be really awesome to do something with our dryland fields. So that's something that'd be really nice. But basically, waist tall corn, waist high corn, I guess would be the cutoff I would feel for anything side dressing with our applicator. Like I said, the tractor is the limiting factor. He said it'll push the corn over a little bit, which I agree. With the tractor, it would push it over just a little bit there at waist high, and it'll spring right back up, which I wouldn't be surprised either. I wouldn't want to go on any taller corn though than waist high. Waist high, in my opinion, is pretty darn tall to be going out there in. But like I said, I mean, if it's all if it does pay, I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe that'd be something we'll look into. So, but I would move to more custom work with the Y dropping. So if any of you guys locally are interested that are watching this, are interested in doing some side dress Y drop comparisons, or wanting me to do Y dropping, I would be very open to working with you depending on how close you are. So. So St. Joe County, that's cool. Hey, thanks for stopping by, G&G. I appreciate it. So you're about an hour away from where I'm at, Richter. So whereabouts are you located then, if you're about an hour away? See, that's the thing, Jared. I don't know. I mean, that's something we're testing out there. I mean, like I said, it was just extra that was in the applicator. So we figured, you know what, we were going to go out there anyways. So does it justify, extra wear and tear, which essentially there's not a lot of wear and tear. You're just essentially pulling an applicator through the field with no actual draft pull because you're not actually putting anything physically in the ground like a Collier blade. You're just essentially pulling a cart with a tank on it. With hoses hanging off of it. So there's really no draft pull. Yes, it's overkill for the 8530, but it's the only tractor that has physically enough hydraulics without putting a Fozzie valve on anything. So south of Rochester, about 7 miles. Okay, I understand where you're at then. So yeah, I mean, if it pays. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's something that we're checking out this year. I mean, we've got probably about 30 to 35 check strips of different stuff that we're doing. So I cannot remember a time that we've had this many check strips. I mean, it's pretty interesting to have this many checks out this year to compare and basically yield what we need to be changing for next year, which basically a lot of things, what we're going to be changing for next year is what we're going to be discussing next week with our agronomic consultants and talking with the guy that we work with, or what we work with our group for fertilizer blends up in Michigan, to basically get an idea on for next year, build a program off of stuff that we've seen so far and stuff that the tissue tests are showing. So, but we want to get the second set of samples in. That way we can kind of compare the first two samples here to kind of see changing and stuff like that. You know, it's a lot of things that we got to take into consideration before we start making major changes. So now, as far as major changes go, I mean, I'm just talking, you know, fertilizer blends and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not talking equipment changes, because obviously, I mean, the only equipment I would be considering right now is a sprayer. So, and not physically right now. I mean, it would be something, if we can swing this winter, I would like to do, so for next year. So what else you guys want to talk about? I'll run this till probably about 9:30. Let's 30. Wheat harvest would be in about a week and a half. I'll have some videos on that, but yeah, I don't really know a whole lot of stuff going on. Basically, I mean, we're pretty much done with. We finished side dressing, like I said. I don't know if I said it in this stream or the earlier stream. Finished side dressing last Wednesday and finished the last of the custom work as of right now, unless there's some custom work that comes about later, which I highly doubt this year. But it sounds like I'm going to have quite a bit next year, more than likely, depending on how stuff turns out with these Y drops, which, in my opinion, I'm fairly confident in them, basically based on what we're seeing with these. So, do you know De Young Dairy over by Francisville? I do not. I do not know De Young Dairy. If you bought a sprayer, yeah, the applicator would stay no matter what. I mean, like I said earlier, I mean, that would be just more, like I said, to keep some pressure off the sprayer. That way we're not having to pull off a post-emerge and go switching to side dressing and have to switch back and do more post-emerge. I mean, the applicator is just there for a cushion on the sprayer. I mean, the whole purpose of doing late season with the Y drops with the sprayer, though, would be on our dry land fields that we can't fertigate on. So, I mean, that's my thought on that. I mean, I still would want to get 360 Y drops for the sprayer, but yeah, I mean, that's just my thoughts on that. Plus, the applicator holds more than what a sprayer would. I mean, our gallons per acre that we'd have to be putting out for side dressing wise, I mean, we're putting anywhere between 50 and 80 gallon out. So, I mean, you get 1,000-gallon sprayer versus an 1,800-gallon sprayer. Obviously, you're going to cover a heck of a lot more acres than what you can with the sprayer. So, is it all the Y drops or more from root development getting to nutrients? So, kind of elaborate on what you're asking there, Jared, as far as what do you mean? What's your question there, I should say? Are you talking like, is it due to the fact where we're placing the nutrients with the Y drops? Like, is it because of the responses that we're seeing with these tissue tests as far as so quickly because of where we're putting the Y drops? Or are you saying just because of some of these rain events? Okay, so we haven't had any rain, put it that way, as far as a measurable rain to amount to anything to put anything in the ground till today. So without irrigating it in. So my thoughts on that is by putting it right there at the base of the plant, you're being able to essentially, if it washes down, corn roots grow at a 30-degree angle. So if you're putting your fertilizer, so say Let me draw you guys a picture because I'm running out of hands here. Corn roots grow at a 30-degree angle. So my theory, and so's Dad's, if you're going to drag a colder blade, now I'm not bashing any of you guys that run a colder blade. If you're going to run a colder blade through the ground, you're potentially going to cut roots, or also with a knife shank, say through 28 or anhydrous, you're potentially going to cut roots also. So let me draw you guys a quick picture here as far as, placement. So right here, there's your corn plants, there's your roots, and basically, here's your traditional method of placing your fertilizer with, say, 28 or anhydrous. So I'll write A and C for colder. So A for anhydrous, C for colder, and then Y for Y drop. So basically your lines, what I'm referring to is right there. I mean, that's not quite as accurate as what it should be, but essentially you're going down in that profile, in that root profile, and cutting roots potentially, but placing your anhydrous in 28 somewhat close to the roots, depending on the stage of the crop. These roots could only be, developed this far versus what I had drawn out. And if your nitrogen's clear down here and your roots are where I have circled, those corn roots are not yet to that nitrogen yet. So that right there gives you, you have a lot bigger you have a lot more of a time elapsed there in order for those roots to get to that nitrogen. Basically, you have a leaching period where your nitrogen could actually leach down into the soil if you're not running a stabilizer. So essentially, with the Y drops being able to be placed right there at the base of the plant with these dots here, on either side of the plant, when it rains, or theoretically when it, irrigate, you'll wash this right down into the root profile, right where I have circled here. And once that nitrogen enters that root profile, those roots are able to take up the nitrogen. So in theory, it's better placement, quicker uptake. Yes, I mean, in theory, my picture isn't accurate as far as application depth with an anhydrous applicator or a 28 bar. But what I'm saying is at a 30-inch spacing, and corn roots growing at a 30-degree angle, those corn roots, depending on how tall the plant is or how developed the plant is, those corn roots are going to take longer, depending on the stage of the crop, obviously, and how developed that root system is underneath. The corn roots are not near that 28 or that anhydrous band. You're already at a disadvantage because those corn roots have to chase to that 28 or anhydrous. Now, if your corn roots are developed enough where you're placing that 28 and that anhydrous and you're placing them there, but the problem is you're potentially cutting roots, which is also setting back the plant uptaking that nutrient. That's just my theory on it. So what the Y dropping, in my opinion, is by being able to place it there and putting it down right there in that profile with a rain event, you're putting it right there in the profile without disturbing the soil, and also without cutting any roots, potentially setting that plant back. And I'm not saying it sets it back by a whole bunch. I'm just saying, by cutting those roots, you're essentially severing the line of that root being able to access that 28. Now, I'm not saying it's not going to access it. I'm just saying it's going to set it back from accessing it. It's just like cutting off a finger that's, regenerative. Kyle, you're in here. Awfully late for you to be on here right now. With you having to get up so early tomorrow, unless you're getting a day off tomorrow. I don't know. Yeah, Corona cut. You haven't seen me in a while, I know that. With this whole COVID-19 going on. I did shave, put it that way. I know you were giving me crap about that. But I mean, that's just my theory, guys, as far as root zones being cut. I mean, with the Y drops, I mean, you're placing it right there. I mean, I know you guys probably all are thinking, oh, he's drank the Kool-Aid as far as, the 360 Kool-Aid goes. But in my theory, it's working, guys. I mean, it is working. Buy these tissue tests. It is working. Plain and simple. I mean, the neighbors can laugh. The neighbors can say, oh, how can they dribble nitrogen on top of the ground and expect it to work? It's working. It is working. I mean, plain and simple. I mean, as far as, yield comparison goes, like I said, we're going to have two different trials, Kyle, we're going to have two different trials, anhydrous versus Y drop, anhydrous versus Y drop, and Y drop versus colder with the 28. So, I mean, I'll let you guys know on the yield difference. I'm not going to tell you guys actual yield because that's their yield data, but I will tell you the yield difference as far as bushels wise go, as far as, it was a 5 bushel increase over running it with a colder, or it's 7 bushel better running it with the Y drop compared to a colder. It's all different things. Necessarily, that's why we're running stabilizer with the Y drops. I mean, who knew we were going to have 3 weeks here that we weren't going to have a measurable rain? Good year to put the Y drops to a test. I mean, essentially, we're testing the theory on, not only the Y drops, and second, the stabilizer. So, I mean, arguably, you guys can say we're crazy for dribbling nitrogen on top of the ground and hoping for the best, but it's working. It is working. Now, granted, you guys can all laugh and say, well, all of these are irrigated tissue test results. Not all of them. This one right here on the cover, right here, is a dryland one, and it's working. So, as Kyle would say, it is working. Did you put stabilizer on the irrigated ground? No. Our theory on that was, which I can actually fall back on the hydrohume talk on that. I totally agree there, Toy. Toy Farmer, I totally agree with you. Doing test strips, I mean, that's why we've got 30 some of them out. And they're all different trials. They're not just Y drop trials. We've got starter trials out. We've got in-furrow trials out. We've got population trials out. We've never had this many trials before, put it that way. And I was talking to Kyle about this the other day. Why do you retract your message, Kyle? But yeah, so our stabilizer on the irrigated, our theory was if we were going to go through the field and I was going to Y drop and I was going to turn the irrigator on right when I was leaving, why would we put a stabilizer out there if we're going to irrigate it in? That was our theory. But with this hydrohume, hydrohume is not only a stabilizer, but also a nutrient uptake enhancer. If there is a benefit to running that, and it shows a benefit not only to stabilizing nitrogen, because we're going to pull tissue tests on these to compare the N-Fix versus the hydrohume to see if the nutrient uptake reading Kyle's comment here, but if there's a benefit to increasing nutrient uptake optimization here, would that be a benefit to running on irrigated ground? So that would be, gosh darn it, there's a fly in here. That would be a good trial if hydrohume does show a benefit. So let's just say hydrohume does show a benefit. I would like to next year do a check on some irrigated ground with hydrohume to see, is there a benefit? Because necessarily we don't need to have a stabilizer agent on irrigated ground. If we're able to control Mother Nature rainfall as far as on our irrigated ground, necessarily we don't need a stabilizer. At that point, we would only be chasing the nutrient uptake enhancer benefit of hydrohume. So if there's a benefit, we'll use it on all the ground potentially. That's my theory on it. I've been having a lot of, personal thoughts on this while side dressing and looking at all of our corn and deciphering, what potentially we can do. But getting a new semi is totally out of the question there, Kyle, unless, which I need to talk to you on that. My God, if we got a semi and we put a guy in it, put it to work for you guys, I don't know. Is there money to be made there? I don't know. Buy a semi, put a guy in it, and have him work for you guys with our truck. I don't know. I don't know if there's money to be made there or not. You got to tell me that, Kyle, because you guys are making all that money getting all those new semis and quads. Yeah, a lot of theories going on here. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I said, there's, gosh darn it, that stupid fly. But yeah, there's, like I said, we've got like 30 some trials out here. So very interesting. Pivots can only reach so far, though. That is correct. 40-acre field, we can cover about 38 acres, though, with an irrigator. So there is a 2-acre chance, though. But like I said, 2 acres that's non-irrigated, you're basically your top end yield on that dry land is 160 bushel, regardless, unless you catch rains in August, which I'm not going to gamble on catching rains in August for those irrigated fields. So personally, I do not care about those dry corners on that irrigated ground. I hate to act like that, and I probably come off a little harsh or brash on that, but my theory is those dry corners are going to make 160 bushel, if even that. So like Jared just said, I mean, if you can hit 350 bushel corn and, well, not just hit, I mean, if you can average, say, like 325 on irrigated ground, and hey, 48 people, 48 likes, that's awesome. But if you can average, say, like 325 bushel corn on irrigated ground, theoretically, those dry corners don't matter at all. I mean, that's like a drop in the bucket for comparing. I mean, essentially right now, I mean, they're a drop in the bucket compared, at 270 bushel corn. But if you can average 325, I'd be happy. I mean, that'd just blow me away, put it that way. I mean, if you could average anywhere between 3 and 350, $3 corn, I mean, it pencils very well. And the only thing is you got to look at, okay, your cost per acre expense on it. If you can pencil, the amount of fertilizer applications and the fertilizer that you would be putting out there and efficiently doing it, can you do 350 bushel corn? I mean, I know these figures are not correct at a cost per acre basis, but, at $3 corn, well, we're looking at $3.50 corn, but without changing any numbers, I mean, you could be looking at a $413 per acre return at $3.50 corn, per acre. I mean, obviously, corn's not at $3.50, but, obviously these numbers are not correct as far as, factoring in AMS and, we got to take out, basically we got to update this chart to take out the anhydrous and put in substitute for, gosh darn it, stupid fly. Can put in 28 instead of anhydrous in here and, figure up a program for if we can figure out how to go to 325 bushel corn. Let's just say 325 bushel corn. Like I just said, these expense, this cost per acre thing is not quite as accurate as what it needs to be. But at $3 corn, you can make $163 an acre at 325 bushel corn. Now, granted, like I said, these expenses are not all factored in here correctly. But I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know. I mean, who knew though? I mean, obviously, I mean, I don't know. Then corn would be $1.75, yeah, because with all the 400 bushel corn that I'd be hitting there on the monitor and averaging 350, you could, push corn down the sub dollar range, sub $2, mid dollar 50 range. Yeah. No, I'm just theorizing here. I mean, 300 bushel corn would be cool, but it takes work. It takes a lot of work. All of a sudden, Kyle got really quiet when I asked him about, putting this truck on the road. I don't know if he's in here or not. He's probably not in here no more. He probably had to go to bed because I know he gets up at like 3 in the morning. Oh, man. So what else you guys want to talk about? We'll run this for another 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. Like I said, new video tomorrow, 10 a.m. New video Tuesday. We'll put a new video out on Wednesday and new video on Friday. So kind of space these videos out a little bit for you guys. We should have $5 corn rather than $3 corn. Well, when you take 40% of corn usage out of the equation, I can see why we're at $3 corn very easily. In my opinion, in general, what my thoughts are on 15-inch wheat, don't even plant it. And the only reason why I say that is because I want to get out of wheat in general. But in my honest opinion on 15-inch wheat, you're going to have a 10 to 15 bushel yield drag on 15-inch wheat. Plain and simple, hands down. It's proven fact. 10 to 15 bushel yield drag on 15-inch wheat compared to a 7.5-inch drill. Yeah, drills are a pain in the rear. I totally understand your pain because we've got a 20-foot 750 and it sucks having to rebuild it. But if you want high wheat yields, you got to have narrow row spacing. So. Do you think 10-inch wheat could work? In theory, yes. Talking with what's his name? Needham. Phil Needham. That's his name. Phil Needham. We talked with Phil Needham a little bit down at the farm show. I mean, 10-inch wheat, yeah, I mean, it would work. 15-inch wheat, I mean, yeah, you're still going to get a slight yield drag with 10-inch. I would say about 5 bushel. Not proven though, but 10 to 15 for sure on 15. So, yeah, I know a lot of guys are very interested in that, Danny, as far as our 30-inch row bean comparison to 7.5s, even though we're not theoretically comparing 7.5-inch spacing to 30s. I mean, we are comparing in-furrow trials and also discussing starter on beans and stuff like that, even though we did put starter on all of our 30-inch row beans. So if we went away with the wheat, what would we do with the drill? Keep it for drilling rye. For man, we will keep the drill if we go to, let's just say we go to 30-inch row beans. We would keep the drill to drill rye, the save for cover crop seed. That's what we would do. Eventually, I would like to get a bigger drill and eventually get a second planter in the very near future for beans if we end up going to 30-inch row beans. 15 intro beans, in my opinion, you run down too many beans in order to justify having 15 intro beans, in my opinion, for spraying, unless you set up some form of tramline pass for spraying, which, you know, in my opinion, if you can side dress beans in 30-inch rows and get 85 bushel plus beans, for us, I mean, I'd do it hands down. Have you ever broadcasted cereal rye? So we've actually broadcasted. I'll get back to your question then, Nick. But we've actually broadcasted cereal rye on ground in November. It actually didn't even incorporate it in with the vertical till, and it still germinated, and we got about 75% stand. And that's just broadcasting it on from our custom applicator with his big A and the spreader. Worked out good for being late November, early December. We've actually came in and drilled rye last December 13th in front of the house, drilled rye, and that rye came up and was actually up in January, partly because of our abnormally warm winter, and plus rye is able to germinate under colder temperatures than what wheat can, and is a lot more hardier than wheat. Hence why I want to go away from wheat. It's because it has a lesser risk to freezing. We planted 10-inch wheat for years and went to 8-inch, had better yields with the 10s over the 8s. Early weed control is the only problem with the 10s. It's all based on location too. I mean, in our area, the narrower the row spacing, the better. So that's just our opinion or what we've found. And in theory, from what other people have talked on yield data. So, but there again, we do high intensive wheat management as far as splitting up the nitrogen applications in general and stuff. But I just hope we completely go away with wheat next year. I mean, that's my plan, and I know Dad was really talking about going away from it also for next year. So, but going back to Nick's question on 30 intro beans weed pressure. Yes, there is a greater chance due to less shading of beans in 30-inch rows, with them being in wider rows, of an increase of weed pressure. So basically, you want to have a good pre-down, good residual program, and that's what we're finding this year. I mean, we got a residual down out there right now. It's essentially dual. It's this Ever Pre-X, yes, metallic ore. So we did a burn down, I believe, on that field. It was Roundup and dicamba. Came back in, planted, and just recently came out there, touched up some field edges out there with Roundup, and then came out there with dicamba when we before the cutoff date. Did dicamba with Roundup and the Ever Pre-X, and clean, really clean, love it. Trivents is a really, really nice program. If you want to put Trivents out for residual, that does an amazing job. But yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be really interesting to see what these 30 intro beans do. I really hope they work out really well, and that would mean less acres for the drill, and potentially very soon in the near future go to a 30 intro bean planter. And what I mean by soon, in very near future, I mean hopefully within the next 2 years, no more than that, if 30 intro beans work out. So. Double crop beans, yes, Mark. We do double crop beans. We're kind of on the fringe area as far as we got to have them in by, like, say, July 14th. So anything after that, you shouldn't even bother doing double crop beans. July 12th, July 14th. So. Northwest Indiana, 100 miles south of Chicago. Whereabouts are you located, Double? More specifically, where at in Northwest Indiana? I don't know. Somebody's just hauling around here in front of the farm. Okay, because I'm in Minnesota. I was curious about 10-inch because I was thinking of upgrading my drill and the used ones I've seen 10-inch spacing. Yeah, like I said, I mean, for our experience though, I mean, 7.5 is the way to go over 10-inch. So down by Lafayette. Okay. I've heard of guys down south, say in central Indiana and south, having better luck with 7.5 or 10-inch wheat over 7.5. So that could be why. It seems like in our area, anywhere our area north, the narrow row spacing works a lot better. What fungicide did you use this year on your wheat? It would have been Approach Prima is what we used. We use that on the corn also. Not on all the corn acres. We use that on a lot of irrigated corn though. Now our drilled beans are 7.5 inches as well. I mean, that's why we use the drill not only for wheat, rye, and also our beans. That's why I still would want to keep the drill around for the rye, even though if we get rid of wheat completely and we end up going to 30-inch row beans, I still want to have that option to drill rye. So, yeah. Yeah, so we do Approach Prima on the corn. Last year we did about 300 acres of corn on that program and another 300 next year. That's why I would like to go to a high clearance sprayer as well to be able to do our own fungicide. You know, in my opinion, does fungicide equate to yield or is it required? My opinion, it increases guarantees your stock integrity better. It also allows the plant to stay greener, therefore allowing it to die maturely instead of prematurely, which is essentially what happens in the fall. Almost every single corn plant dies prematurely, therefore equating in lower test weight and therefore equating in lost yield. So allowing for fungicide to go be applied, you know, on better ground, it allows for the plant to fully mature, therefore putting more energy into the ear, therefore equating into higher test weight, therefore equating into higher yield, therefore allowing for more stock integrity to support that bigger ear. So, have you used Beck's seed? Never. We have done trials with it though, side by side, Pioneer and Beck's for customers that want to do side by sides. Actually, we have a customer this year that's comparing on YouTube uh, on their own ground Beck's to Pioneer, and yeah, so that's going to be interesting. But yeah. So you do a 2-pass fungicide. We usually have a head scab problem with. Oh, okay. So you guys do a 2-pass fungicide on wheat. I thought you were talking corn, but yeah, so 2-pass on wheat. We've done 2-pass before on wheat before. We've actually just gone to 1-pass just because our head scab and stuff like that has been significantly low in our area, really. So. What did better? What are you asking there, Braxton? Whereabouts are you located, O'Neill? We'll just keep running this stream as however long you guys want to run it. If you guys want to keep up the discussion, we'll just keep running it. Pioneer, and I'm not being biased. I mean, it's Pioneer that beats it. And that's at a farming standpoint. I mean, I'm not being a seed salesman at this point right now speaking. I'm talking on a farmer standpoint. Pioneer beats the Bex, so. Now, Braxton, I know I talked to you guys before about this. I mean, if you guys are interested in working with us, I mean, I would be more than happy to work with you guys on working with you guys on seed for sure for next year. We're going to be having our field day or plot day, I should say. It's not really a field day. It's a plot day. We'll end up doing that in August. So if you guys want to come to that, I can get you. I can make sure I write you guys down for an invite. Yeah, I mean the Corteva Cash program. I mean that's been a real game changer, not only for our operation but for a lot of other operations. I mean when that came out, uh, I mean we've been using Corteva brand herbicide ever. I mean, well, even DuPont herbicide. But I mean we've been using DuPont herbicide also before the whole Dow DuPont merger. We've been really happy with all that, and then when the Corteva products rolled around, we've been using all Corteva as well. And icing on the cake, as far as I'm concerned, with the Corteva Cash. I mean, Corteva Cash is a game changer, in my opinion, as far as um, between the financing and being able to take dollars off your seed balance there, and equate to dollars towards your chemical. I mean, that's huge. And including that with NServe, I mean, a lot of guys use NServe up here, which that's huge. We don't do any NServe because we never did any uh, stabilizer with our anhydrous, which if we were still running anhydrous, I'd probably want to run some NServe just to do a comparison trial, but we're not running anhydrous anymore. Um, but since a lot of guys do pre-plant anhydrous up here, a lot of guys use NServe, so that's pretty big for them. Exactly. That's what we hear from customers all the time. I mean, I understand that, you know, decal, there's some pretty hot decal numbers out there that will run right there with Pioneer. But, you know, just in my opinion, in the trials that we've done side by side with customers, I mean, Pioneer will walk all over the bucks. So, I mean, that's just what we've seen. So, see, we don't run any N-serve side dressing with anhydrous that we did before. But yeah, like I said, a lot of guys pre-plant running N-serve pre-plant with their anhydrous. So being able to have the Corteva cache being put toward being able to put that Corteva cache towards N-serve, that was pretty big for a lot of those guys. So let's run this till about 9:30, and we'll go ahead and end the stream there. I appreciate you guys all tuning in and listening in. All the likes go to show that you guys really enjoy listening to these streams. So I really appreciate it. What made you start YouTube? So the whole YouTube thing started when I got a drone. And when I got a drone, I started uploading raw footage, and then I learned how to edit. And then I got some GoPros, and I ended up putting GoPro footage with my drone videos. And Kyle Sample, for those of you that saw Kyle in here earlier, when we were seniors in high school, he told me that I should bring or go about doing vlogs, and I told him no way in the world I would do vlogs because I did not think vlogging was the way to go. Needless to say, vlogging is really fun, and I love doing it now. And in turn, it helps. It makes money essentially. I mean, it's kind of cool that I can make money off of YouTube. Now, I'm not going to talk about how much money I can make off of YouTube because I'm going to keep that private. But yeah, so that's kind of how the whole YouTube thing got to this point. Do you have an anhydrous rig, or did you get it custom done? So we've actually had an anhydrous rig. We actually ran two rigs there for a couple years. We actually rented a rig, a second rig. We had a rig, or well, we still do, and it's more likely going to be for sale next year. It's a 15 shank 3250 DMI applicator, 3-point mount, rate controller, and intercooler. So if you guys are interested in that, let me know. Emails down below. It's not officially for sale. It's not going to be for sale till this winter. If we do end up deciding to sell it, hopefully we do, because then that means the Y drops are doing their job. But yeah, more than likely that's going to be for sale this winter or late this fall. So if you guys are interested in that right now, go ahead and email me. My email's down below, one of my 4 emails that I have. But yeah, it's 15 shank 3250 DMI, 3-point mount anhydrous applicator, Henniker rate controller, Henniker cooler. So if you guys are interested, email me. Not officially for sale yet, but potentially will be this winter, more likely. But yeah, we rented a rig to run alongside that one when we were pumping over 2,500 acres there for a little while, and that was before my time. But yeah, so we lost some ground due to not being able to compete on when that ground was sold. And yeah, kind of sucks. But you can't really compete at $11,000 an acre ground price. Hard to compete. Oh, that's pretty cool, Steven. That's really cool. So yeah, like I said, if any local guys are interested in having any custom Y dropping done, let me know either in the comments right now or email me, get with me online, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. Let me know. If you guys want to work with us on seed, let me know. Email me, contact me via Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Instagram, stuff like that, all that good stuff. I mean, let me know. Like I said, I'd be more than happy to work with you guys if you really want to work with us. So. Excuse me. So. I missed why you don't use anhydrous. So we ended up switching to 28 this year, just out of recommendation from our agronomic consultants that we work with. So that's why we're not running anhydrous this year. And plus, it's easier on the microbes. 28 is compared to anhydrous. So, but yeah, more than likely, if anyone's interested in that, that will be potentially for sale this winter. Late this fall, early this winter. So I've got a price somewhat in mind for it, but like I said, it's not officially for sale yet. So how far are you from Alex? I'm about 4 hours away from those guys down there. Rush Farms, Alex and Ross and Augie. Well, we got about 4 more minutes here. Any last minute discussion questions? Shout out again to Mark for donating that $1.99. I really appreciate it. If Mark's still in the stream or not, I don't know. But again, shout out to you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you guys for watching in general. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. This just goes to show every single like that you guys really appreciate listening to this kind of stuff. Yeah, so new video tomorrow, new video Wednesday, new video Friday. Wheat harvest, week and a half. A lot of cool things coming as far as demo. Oxbow sprayers coming eventually here, more than likely. We'll get to play around with that a little bit. Yeah. Did you like new John Deere? Yeah, the X9 combine, 1100 and 11 or 1000 or 1100 or whatever. Yeah, there's 2 of them. I haven't really researched them all too much, but yeah, pretty interesting. 11. I think it's what, a 1000 and 1100 or something. I don't know. There's two different models. Pretty interesting. Puts our 690 to shame. Wouldn't mind having the smaller model of the two, but not for probably what they're asking for it though. Insane amount of money, I guarantee it. Way more than 600,000, more likely, probably around 750. Oh yeah, 1,000, 1,100. That's what I thought. Yeah. Thanks, Steven. So 18 rows on 20-inch spacing though. So same 40-foot head for corn, but it's on 20-inch spacing. So we run ITC on that sprayer, on that 4230 rig with 800-gallon and 60-foot booms, 250-gallon, two 250-gallon saddle tanks, and then a 300 on the back, and 60 pair booms on the front. Brown box ITC guidance, so just point A to point B, AB lines on the monitor. No auto steer. Reason why no auto steer is because basically due to the fact that sprayer sits so high off the ground. I mean, it's not insanely high, but where the globe would be positioned and where essentially it just wouldn't necessarily work. And we talked with our AMS guy on that too, and he kind of understood our point and reasoning on the response rate and stuff like that. I mean, it just necessarily would not work. ITC is not necessarily going away. ITC support is going away. That is the misconception there. So ITC will still be around. ITC support, however, will go away. So if you have any issues with that, Deere will no longer support ITC as far as the support goes, which kind of sucks, which that isn't necessarily not the total reason why I want to go to a different sprayer, but plays into it. So, not that we've had issues with ITC. I mean, ITC works great for what we do with it. As far as a point A to point B, just AB line set up there. But personally, I would love to have like a Starfire 6000 or 3000 with auto steer RTK for a sprayer. I mean, that'd be awesome. Oh, yeah. Well, it is currently 9:30, and I'm going to edit a video. I'm going to edit a video for you guys yet tonight. It shouldn't take me too long, though. Keith, if you ever write... Check. Oh, okay. I completely mixed that up there. If you... Keith, you ever check out Mike Mitchell channel? You would love his equipment and reviews. Farms over 10,000 acres. Really? Oh, wow. I'll have to check that out. It's pretty cool. Would you consider ag leader? I'll answer that real quick. That'd be the last question for this evening. Next live stream would be Sunday. But yeah, no, I would not consider ag leader guidance, even though essentially yield monitoring wise is derived from ag leader. I'm not a big fan of ag leader guidance. So yeah, John Deere's yield monitoring is all based off of ag leader. So, yeah. Well, with that, next live stream, next Sunday evening. Don't really have a set time, but you guys kind of know the drill by now. Most of you guys do that are not new and have been around this channel for quite some time. It will be around 8 o'clock-ish. Yeah, definitely check out Mark's Motorsports and Farming channel. Shout out to him. So next stream, like I said, Sunday evening around 8 o'clock Central Time-ish. Next video tomorrow at 10 a.m., Wednesday at 10 a.m., and Friday at 10 a.m. Wheat harvest, like I said, right around the corner. Hauling corn next week. Tissue test more. Fertigating more. Like I said, wheat harvest soon. A lot of cool things coming. Demo, more than likely. Sprayer. Expo sprayer coming potentially, more than likely here within the next couple of weeks. So you guys can look forward to that. Yeah, so a lot of cool things going on yet. And with that, Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. Be sure to give this video stream. My mistake. Be sure to give this stream a like, not video, stream a like on the way out. And I will catch you guys tomorrow at 10 a.m. in the next video. Thanks for watching.